many times that I went to her apartment to check in on her, and she would laugh and say, "Oh, I forgot to turn my phone back on, sorry." And this time was just very different. My sisters couldn't get a hold of her, and just the guilt and the regret, and not knowing what really happened to her, not knowing if she died instantly or if she had been waiting for me. So just a whole lot of guilt and regret surrounding that.
I did not realize what Rosie went through with her mom. And listening to her story, I realized how angry I was for the simple fact that I wasn't there when my dad was dying. And to me, I cared the same guilt she was carrying. Then I didn't realize how serious it was. And I did not tell my dad all the things I wanted to say before he passed, just like she didn't. We both had unfinished business.
Much like in the gospel, Dee and I had a moment that was our true road to Emmaus on the Camino. Everywhere we looked, everything was beautiful. There were just interesting, incredible things to look at the entire way. Beautiful cathedrals. We walked under grape trellises and down cobblestone streets. Everything, there was something interesting to look at, something to experience. So much joy and laughter. And then we had one day that we came to this path in the woods that was very different than any path we had taken. It was this dirt path lined with evergreen trees, and it looked very much like the Pacific Northwest.
Oh.
And then it started raining, and all of a sudden, Dee and I found ourselves away from the group in a place with nothing interesting to look at. It just felt very familiar, no distractions, no interruptions. And we were these two disciples walking this road with sorrow and loss and heartache. And I have no idea how long that road was, maybe 7 miles. And we talked and talked and talked. And Dee's the first person I really shared the entire story, detail, feelings of my mom's death. We laughed, we cried, and we got to the end of the road. And I just felt so much peace.
By Rosie and I walking through the woods, talking, we had our parents with us, just like Jesus was walking with the disciples. Not in person, but in spirit. And that was probably the best experience. And that's what Camino represents.
It's just noticing and recognizing that God is always with you, and He is always with all of us. And like Rosie was talking about the road to Emmaus, like at first you don't recognize it, and it just might not be where you're looking, but He's there. That's something to be mindful of. And I have a lot of times in my life, including this trip, where I can look back and think that was hard or challenging, but like God was definitely there, and He had a plan, and it all worked out for like a bigger, better thing, even if it didn't feel like it at the time.
The moment we started the walk, my children and I and my husband, we decided to honor my dad's memory by including him in the walk anyway. And what we decided to do is we had these dinners after a long day of walking. We'll gather everybody at 8 o'clock. We'll sit down for dinner. We always had wine and we always had bread. So we decided every time as a group we sit down to eat, we'll pull up a chair and designate that for my dad. And with the breaking of the bread, we include him in the meal.
The Road to Emmaus story has become one of my favorites, and this most recent time reading it and reflecting on it, I had a new insight that I really had not considered before. Not only have I been traveling this road to Emmaus over and over again in my life, but my mom's final road to Emmaus. And to think about my mom being alone in her apartment and dying alone and not having me with her, to think about that as her road to Emmaus, and Jesus was absolutely with her. She never was alone, and that has brought me so much comfort.
It makes me feel better to reflect back on parts of my life where something felt challenging or difficult or like it was the worst thing in the world at that moment in time, and realize that God was in that moment and he did carry me through that, and he will continue to do so. And so I think that that's something that can be helpful for people, is reflecting on their own lives and times that they experienced something and see how they can see God in that moment, and then use that as like inspiration to carry them forward, and just realize like he's gonna be there just like he always has.